Hey everybody, it's Clint Powell, and today's episode is brought to you by two great sponsors. One is my friends at JB Millworks. Jeremy Price and his staff do wonderful work. I'm going to tell you how to get a hold of them first. jbmillworks.com, or you can call them at 706-965-6940. And then I'm going to tell you why. You ready? They have great products. They have doors, they have stair parts, trim work, anything you're wanting for remodel or new construction. But they also have beautiful plantation shutters. Make your house look gorgeous. And high quality, energy saving, gorgeous, beautiful sun-clad windows. I know a little bit about sun-clad windows. I know the owner of the company, Frank Anderson, and I'm telling you right now, if you have a home and you're wanting to get the best of both worlds, high energy savings and yet a beautiful wood look on the interior, it is gorgeous inside and outside wood-clad windows from Sun Windows. jbmillworks.com or 706-965-6940. Also, a sponsor of today's episode is Lori Monteith with Keller Williams, or as she is known on Facebook and Google, Team Monteith. Lori started in the real estate industry back when everybody was getting out of it with the great economic downturn. She made the most of it. She pulled through. She does business the right way. And in a world where there's all these multiple offers, houses are not staying on the market long, you're wanting to move or you're wanting to sell, you need someone who has a track record of getting things done. Find out more about her. Team Monteith is on Facebook. You can also Google Lori Monteith, but you can call them at 315-0042, 423-315-0042, or you can find out more at findchattanoogarealestate.com. Enjoy today's episode. Hey folks, Clint Powell here. This is During the Break. Let's do this. Hey everybody, thanks for finding During the Break podcast. Do me a favor, all you iTunes folks, rate and review it. It helps us grow the podcast. You can find it everywhere, Spotify, Google Music, or you can just find it at duringthebreakpodcast.com. Scroll halfway down, there's a place to sponsor the podcast so I can make a living doing what I love. We got a brand new studio we're building coming. This podcast is kind of an extenuating. It's a part two of a podcast I did about ghost stories, specifically Chattanooga ghost tours here in Chattanooga, Tennessee. We talked about some very cool locations that would surprise you that are haunted, just experiences. I found it intriguing. Whether you believe in ghosts or you don't believe in ghosts, you can't deny that you're surrounded by people that do believe in ghosts. And so it's a good listen. It's entertainment. But I also teased this podcast because this podcast is intriguing for different reasons. And I think our guest, Amy, and I'm going to try it again.
Petulla, just like Petulla Clark.
I was going to say Petulla, and I was looking at your face, and you were like rooting for me, like, you can do it, Clint. And I'm like, I'm going to let her down. Dadgummit, Petulla, I'm sorry.
Not a problem.
I'm sorry.
Happens all the time.
Does it? Well, I got it right the first podcast.
You did.
I nailed it.
Absolutely.
You know what you are from this point forward.
What's that?
Amy. I don't have to say it again. That's good.
That works for me.
I was talking to you in the first podcast, and that it had some cool things in it. But we referenced this one, and the word's dark. It's a little darker. The topic's pretty heavy.
Right.
It's about a real life situation. Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about maybe it's haunted, or maybe it was haunted afterward, what happened there. But this is real life stuff. Mm-hmm. You were on a podcast, a nationally known podcast called Sword and Shield? Or
Sword and Scale.
Scale. But anyway, the reason I'm bringing that up is the book you wrote got you some attention. Mm-hmm. You got on this podcast. You interviewed. I've already asked you, are there some things I shouldn't overlook because I'm learning how to have these kind of conversations.
Right.
I don't want to do interviews. I want to talk. Give us the thumbnail sketch of this crime.
Okay.
And once she starts talking, you'll understand why I said don't listen to this one with the kids in the car, because it's about drugs, sex, murder, and that.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
So there were two gay men, Joey Odom and Charles Scudder, who lived in Chicago. Charles was a professor of pharmacology at Loyola University and also the co-director of the Institute for the Study of Mind, Drugs, and Behavior. So, you can guess what kind of studies they were doing.
There you go.
And Joey kept house for him, help with the kids. He was not exactly a partner. I mean, I think they, had some fun together, but I think actually their relationship was probably deeper than partners, but it wasn't something that, was exclusive with them. But they got fed up with the rat race back in the mid-'70s. And so Charles quit the university on his 50th birthday. They sold the mansion. He sold the mansion, sent a house full of Renaissance-era furniture down to sit in the middle of the national forest in Tryon, Georgia, covered in with tarps for a year.
In the middle? I mean, no building or nothing, just...
Right. In the middle of the forest, covered with tarps.
Why would make him come from Chicago, from there to here?
Well...
Oh, I'm shutting up. Look at me.
Let me talk about
you see this button right here?
Yeah.
You ready? Turning my mic off.
So they did that, sent the furniture down, loaded up the Jeep with 2 huge mastiffs, 2 human skulls, and 12,000 doses of LSD, and came on down, built themselves by hand a castle in the middle of the national forest with no construction experience. They read a book on how to do it. The reason they wound up in Tryon, Georgia, because it is not exactly a bastion of liberal thinking, was they wanted a piece of land, from what I understand, that was surrounded by the national forest. And so they looked in several states, found it here. That's how they wound up here.
They wanted some seclusion.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. They wanted to be off the grid, basically.
Right.
So they lived up there. The Jeep had a big upside down pentagram on the side of the doors, so it's not like they were exactly being inconspicuous.
Yeah,
there were some of those on the chimneys of the house too. Anyway, word got around about them, and people would come to gawk or whatever, and Charles was a great host. He would invite them in. They had a separate building, not the castle, but a separate building that was called the Chicken House, and they entertained up on the 3rd floor in what was called the Pink Room. Which had,
I'm going to start writing down all my questions.
Basically, it was like, pink carpet, mattresses covered with pink sheets. Not a whole lot of real furniture up there. Sometimes they entertained people they were just chatting with. Sometimes they entertained a little bit more intimately.
Yes.
But they were supposed to throw some great parties. Well, a couple of their guests decided that here, I'm sure this is the way they thought of it. And not the way that I would phrase it, but I'm sure they thought of it as, here's these 2 queers living out in the middle of the forest where nobody can hear them scream. They're easy pickings.
There goes your politically correct button for the day.
Right.
But
we're going to rob and murder them. Rob and or murder them. They wound up doing both.
But they had a little bit of a relationship with that person, right? A little bit?
Well, the 17-year-old guy had been over there, a couple times before, had sex with Charles, or oral sex or whatever. I think my understanding of what happened was he went back, his roommate was the other murderer.
Right.
Tony West. The younger guy was Avery Brock, or Kenneth Brock. I think, that Avery went back and, was telling him about these guys, and they made their homemade wine, and, here they lived in the castle and they didn't work, blah, blah, blah. And, it came out somehow during the conversation that, they'd had oral sex, and Tony started making fun of him. So I think that made this kid madder and madder, because he got embarrassed, like it's like teenagers will or whatever. And so he wanted to put it all off on, Dr. Scudder and Joey. And, blame them for it. And so he got madder and madder at them. And that's, eventually reached the level of, I'm going to kill those MFs. And, so I think that's how that
was there some suspicion that they had money?
Well, I think, these guys, the murderers, were not highly educated. Like I said, they were kind of rednecks or whatever. And I think they saw... This was not a large building. It was like 1,600 square feet, I think, between the 2 different stories, 800 per story or whatever.
Right.
But I think the way they saw it is, like I said, here, they live in the castle. They don't work. They managed to support themselves without working, so they must be rich. And
Gotcha.
I think that's what they thought, that they thought they were going to find a bunch of money around there. Well, as it turned out, all they got was like a bag of nickels and dimes, and they got they did get a sword that was kind of jewel encrusted and a leather jacket, and they stole their Jeep. But other than that, they didn't find any money because these guys kept every last penny in the bank. If they would go to the store and buy an Eskimo pie, they would write a check for it, So for those of you who don't know Eskimo pies, that's like the ice cream bar.
Well, and for those who don't know, there's these things called checks. Because where we live in, people don't write checks anymore. They use credit cards. There's a 30-year-old going, what's a check? The hell is a check? Well, okay, before we move forward with the story, you were an attorney for a while.
Right.
So how in the world did you go from this to this? You know what I'm saying? What got you hooked into this one thing? Because we were talking about this off the air. People get killed all the time. Bad. I know it's bad, but there's some very unique things that we're going to talk about. There's some accusations of satanic worship. There is the LSD. They, in the 70s, they were gay, living in the middle of the woods. There's all these. Yeah, I understand it, but what hooked you?
Well, like I said, I came up here in 1986. Right. Heard about this case from the time that I got here. It had happened in 82. People call it the devil worshippers case. It's not satanic worship. One of the guys was a member connected with the Church of Satan, which really has absolutely nothing with the devil to do with the devil at all. They don't even believe in the devil. But that's the name it got tagged with because, people don't really understand the distinction. They hear Church of Satan, they're a bunch of devil worshippers.
Right.
So
I would probably fall in line with that because growing up, the devil and Satan were interchangeable.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. And like I said, the name Church of Satan is just a way for that group to poke fun at Christians, basically. Right. So, I heard about it from the time I came up here. The case actually made international news when it happened. They had some of the tabloids from Europe were flying over in helicopters taking pictures and things.
Really?
Because there were so many bizarre things with it. Then, after practicing law for 20 years, I retired, started the ghost tour. History Press had asked me to write my first book, Haunted Chattanooga. And then, a few years after that, I'd gotten a hankering to write another one. Well, this case I'd heard about originally from when I was practicing law. And then when I started the ghost tour, I started hearing about it from an entirely different angle. So it was like the perfect book to write. It was funny because the History Press came to me, and said, hey, do you want to write another book for us? And I told them, well, I'm actually already working on another book, but it's a true crime. You guys don't handle that. And they said, we have a whole division that does true crime. So that's how that kind of worked out. So
you're not an attorney anymore. You get hooked on this story. Right. You're writing your second book. The research, I would think, I don't know, did it disturb you? Did it bother you? Where did you start? I
mean, like I said, I practiced law for 20 years. So I'm used to, and I've done a murder case before. So I'm used to, the gory details or whatever. And I did domestic law for, a lot of years. And so I'm used to some of the more intimate details that you run across. So it wasn't anything that I found shocking.
Right.
But that's just because of what I'd done for a living. Most people would.
Yeah.
Most people would find it shocking.
That's why you got helicopters flying over. Because
exactly
the readers are going to go, what?
Exactly right.
Yeah.
But no, it was fascinating. I spent weeks pouring through the criminal transcripts on the case. I interviewed over 40 people. A lot of these folks I knew already from practicing law. So a lot of, the attorneys and the judges and the law enforcement folks and some other folks that, that knew some of the people that were involved. Wrote to both of the murderers. Tony West never wrote me back. Kenneth Brock did. But
what was the content of that? I mean, what was the purpose? Just to get their feedback, let them know you're doing it.
I'm doing this book, and I want to know anything you have to say about it. And like I said, Tony ignored it, but Kenneth did write back. So but of course, usually when you have a case like that, when you're contacting someone who's in jail over a case, they want to tell you, their side and why they're not guilty or, whatever. Because, they both admitted that the murders happened. The fact that the LSD was found didn't come out until a couple weeks before trial, well after the murders were being investigated. The murderers had never said anything before about, anybody slipped me any drugs, I was hallucinating, anything like that. But as soon as it came out, oh, yeah, by the way, we found some LSD on the property. Man, they come up with this wild story,
When you say they, the ones
murders,
that got convicted,
the murders, yeah. Yeah, about this wild story about how they were hallucinating. They slipped them, drugs in their drinks or whatever. But like I said, you can't put any faith in that because it was a story that never came out before. It was something they'd never said until this all came out. And Tony West, who was the main one creating this whole fantasy, admitted that he, in his criminal interview or on the stand, it's in the transcript, that he had researched LSD before he started saying all this. So, that kind of tells you
right.
It was just a bunch of bull.
Hey, folks, don't forget this episode is brought to you by JB Millworks, jbmillworks.com. So they concoct this scheme, right, to go back out there.
Uh-huh.
And how did the murders take place? I mean, it just because we said they've been murdered, but a lot of people are like, would they get stopped? Shot, stabbed, thrown off a building? What happened?
It was the really odd thing, I think, about what they did is they decided to take a couple teenagers with them. And I have no idea why. One of them, I think, this kid named Wells, I think they thought he would help them. I don't think that he actually did, but I think he knew a little more about it than he's ever let on. But then his date for the night came along too. She had no clue, about any of it, Teresa Hudgens. I don't know why they would have brought her along if it was just cover, if they thought it, people would think, nothing was going on when they were going up there. Cause I mean, it's isolated out in the middle of the woods. It's not like people knew they went up there anyway, but
yeah.
They took them along. They, originally sat around, having some wine with them or whatever. And then, the one guy, goes downstairs and shoots Joey, who's still in the kitchen. They were in the pink room in the separate building. He goes into the after they tie up the professor
upstairs
with pink sheets. They tie him up with the sheets and go down there, shoot Joey and the dogs, the huge mastiffs I told you about before. Come back up. Basically carry the professor down because they're wanting him to show them where's all this money that didn't exist, and he's trying to tell them there's nothing like that here,
right.
And they're not believing him or whatever. They wind up shooting him as well. So
with the 22,
there were two different weapons. There was a rifle and a pistol.
Okay.
I think that, let me see. One of them got shot primarily with one, and one, primarily with the other one. Right.
Okay, so they're dead. And does everybody just split? Do they leave separate cars? How do they get caught?
One of the rumors, there's been rumors ever since then about the property's cursed, and one of the things that people say it's cursed about is that people's cars don't operate. People have wrecks. There have been one guy who said his transmission fell out, the cars fell off the car. Yeah. The tires fell off the car. So these guys, when they tried to leave, their car wouldn't crank, and that
sounds like every horror movie I've ever watched.
Right.
You know what? I hate to say this. I kept thinking, Jason's coming. I get in the car. It doesn't start.
Right.
This is real life, though.
Yeah, real life. So they wind up taking the Jeep instead. They wind up, eventually getting the car to crank. So they drive it down because they don't want their car left there on the property, and it's kind of a giveaway. So they may not have been smart, but they were smart enough, to not do that. Like I said, stole the Jeep, which is not the most inconspicuous getaway car, because like I said, big old upside down pentagrams on the side of the doors. They take them back to the house, basically threaten the girl. Oh, no, they held the girl for about a week. Didn't let her go.
I didn't know that.
Yep, because they were afraid she'd go tell. They wanted time to get out of town, so they take off, go out west, and they're, like I said, not the brightest guys, don't have much of a plan. We're just going to get out of here and go west. Yeah. Right. Well, then they wind up, getting on each other's nerves, and tensions get hotter and hotter between the two of them. They go to a strip club, and things kind of blew up there. And they're one of, Tony's like, just, get the heck out. Avery's fine. See you later, alligator. Avery winds up coming back home first. What his family says, and there may be some basis for this, it's not anything that's ever been admitted to in the official paperwork, is that there was a tap on Avery's family's phone, and so they heard when he called in and said, "Hey, I'm down in Marietta, gas station, come pick me up." So the police went and picked him up instead. Arrested him with no trouble. Tony, again, the whole story about the car trouble comes into play. Tony drifts around for a little while more, gets lonely. This happened, early December. He comes back, heading back in town Christmas Eve, because, people start missing their families then. And,
this is in 82, right?
82,
yeah.
Right. Pouring down rain. I mean, sheets, not just like, raining a little bit. It was pouring down. So he gets over right across the line in Rossville, in Tennessee. And there used to be the old Palomino Club, I think it was, that was out there. And his car dies, So just like, like I said, car had been dead before, right after he gets there. So, of course, he's disgusted, and he gets out and he stomps up, decides he's going to go to the bar. What does he see outside the bar but a police officer? So he automatically assumes they must be looking for him because here's this police officer and there he is. So he goes out with his arms out, right? Like ready for the handcuffs. Okay, go ahead and lock me up. And the guy's like, what are you talking about? He's like, y'all are looking for me.
Sounds like a guilty conscience.
Right,
yeah.
Right. And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. He's like, I committed 2 murders in, Chattooga County. And the guy's, well, let me look you up on NCIC. I mean, not the brightest.
Wow.
Looks him up twice on NCIC, doesn't find anything. It's like, I don't have anything on you. I mean, he's going to let him go. But no, Tony's insistent. So the guy calls Chattooga County and they say, yeah, we got warrants on him. So he says, okay, fine. Yeah, I'm going to take you down to the police station in Rossville and turn you over to them because they're in Georgia. So he drives him down to Rossville and, they talk to him there. I guess he tells them some about it, makes a confession. Well, they decide that it might be a problem for extradition that he drove him from Tennessee down to Georgia. So they drive him back up to Tennessee and make him walk across the line to Georgia so that the Georgia police can arrest him. I've never heard of a murderer that it took so much effort on his own part for him to get himself arrested. When Chattooga County showed up, but I think it's Christmas Day by then, he's sitting in the lobby smoking a cigarette, just like anybody else. So that's just really
crazy.
It is crazy.
So they take him into custody.
Right, take him into custody.
So then they've already probably, the scenes, they've already been out there. They've recovered all the evidence. They've already got all that together, right? So they know it's these 2 guys. Because Tony practically spelled it out.
They did not know until they talked to Teresa, the teenage girl. And she told them about what happened. Did they get
kidnapping in there too? I mean, if you keep a girl for a week, isn't that kidnapping?
I don't know that they got, I don't know if they got charged with that one or not.
That sounds a little, I mean, you keep somebody for a week.
Well, her Joey Wells' family, I guess, is who she stayed with, which is Tony West's sister's son. Okay. And they never charged his sister, and they never charged Joey Wells, I guess because he gave them some statements.
Okay, yeah.
So it wasn't Tony West himself and Avery Brock that were holding her. It was the family, and they didn't ever charge the family members.
Well, maybe they're.
I'm sure that was leverage to get them to talk.
So you interviewed 40 people.
Yeah, about 40.
40 people.
42, maybe.
Did anything between other than begging to be turned, to be arrested, and the fact that there's satanic worship or Satanist church checks written,
Church of Satan,
Church of Satan, and you've got LSD use, and it's not in the 70s, and they're gay, and they're living in the middle of the woods. Other than those abnormalities,
just those little things.
Let's put that stuff aside. After they've been arrested, through the process of the hearing, was there anything that popped up abnormal? Was there anything that that you kind of go,
Well, yeah. I mean, they brought in people that some teenagers that tried to say, oh yeah, we drank his wine out there and maybe did some drugs or whatever. But after the case is when the more bizarre stuff comes out, right?
Let's hear that.
So the chicken house was burned, I think, before the trial ever happened. Not long after the trial, the castle, the manor, is also destroyed. Rumor has always been that it was a group of ministers that did that, I guess trying to exorcise the demons or whatever. Nobody was ever charged with that. I don't think it was really much investigated. But there's still some ruins out there. They're still standing now. Over the years, there was a good bit of the walls, because it's a brick place, and it was built triple thick, walls. So they stood for a while, but eventually, as vandals came out and
nature takes over,
ransack things. Walls are falling down. People, it was a big thing for a while to steal a brick from Corpsewood as a souvenir. Well, rumor also got around that was one of the ways to invoke the curse. And suddenly, all these bricks start pouring back into the property there. With I'm sorry's. From all these people who said when they took a brick, then all these terrible bad things started happening.
Really?
Bad stuff. They wrecked their car on the way home, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, lots of bricks. You'll find piles of bricks that have been returned back there. No, heck no. Oh, I would never take anything from that property. When I go out there.
I think she's about ready to leave the podcast, ladies and gentlemen.
No, when I went out there, I took them an Eskimo pie. I put it back in the trash pile that they had out there. Here, enjoy.
Good. So the second time you've mentioned Eskimo pies.
They
must like Eskimo pies.
They liked them, yeah.
Okay, so but there was some abnormal. You said now it's a little peaceful. It's kind of settled down, but there was a run there for years and years that it was haunted.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I think it's still haunted. I think they're out there hanging out, still supervising it. One of the things, and this is in my book, after I turned my original draft over into my publisher, I went out, I'd been sitting at a computer for months, my muscles are all knotted up. So I go get a massage. So I'm sitting there talking. This is a young guy. Talking to him about it. Yeah, I just finished a book. Oh, what was your book about? Oh, it's about these, two gay guys that got killed, murdered out in Tryon. He's like, wait a minute. He's like, was that a long time ago? And I said, yeah. He said, I've been out there before. He said, yeah, me and my buddies, they went out there because it was a big high school thing. A lot of them would go out there. Me and my buddies went out there, and he says, it's really weird when we get there. Now, to get to this place, you have to go to the road runs out, and then you drive a mile on a dirt road. You have to find the correct turnoff, and then you have to find the right drive, and then you have to hike half a mile down through the woods to get it. So not easy.
I'm out.
Yeah. But they said, the place you park your car, there's only space for maybe 2 small cars, one normal sized car. They said when they got there, there's no car there, but they get down to the woods, half a mile into the woods, and here's these 2 guys sitting in the middle of the ruins in lawn chairs. And they said, they were nice guys. They looked kind of raggedy, a little bizarre. But he said, they told him about, what had happened there. They said, well, we always meet here on the same day every year. And I said, was it December when this happened? And he said, I don't know. It was cold out. I don't know. I mean, it was, so he said, they got real disturbed about, the peace being disturbed by some truck running up and down the road. He said, me and my buddies, went and hiked around the property some. When we came back, they were gone. We never saw how they got there. So it just rang too many bells. And I happened to have a photo of the professor out in my car. And he was with another guy who I thought originally was Joey, but it turns out it wasn't. So this
ghost? Or are you talking about?
I have a photo of the people,
okay.
The victims. Okay. So I take it inside and I show it to him. The guy's jaw drops. And he's like, that's the guy I said, I saw. Now, this guy wasn't telling me a ghost story. He was just telling me about these 2 guys
that he met. He didn't know?
Yeah,
oh,
exactly
my gosh.
Right. So, and I, like I said, I thought the other guy was Joey. I was like, is that the other guy? He said, no, that's not him. He said, but this was the first guy, right down to the kind of clothes he was wearing.
Wow.
So, when someone tells me a story that they don't know is a ghost story.
That's a ghost story.
Yeah, right.
It turns into a ghost story real quick.
Right.
Wow. Okay. So...
There's been all kinds of bizarre things that have happened.
When you've been out there, have you felt anything? Have you been, does it have an aura about it?
Well, like I said, to me, it feels real peaceful. But I did take some of our equipment out there before, and I did get a lot of language on the Ovilus, the piece that we have that talks. That was
have you taken some friends? Have you taken some of your group out there?
Nope.
And I'm sorry, I'm texting my daughter.
That's okay.
Yeah,
I just went out there. I took the equipment out myself.
Okay.
And, got a lot of stuff about, run, hide, dogs, a lot of words that were related to the case. So,
How about your gut, though, your feeling? Do you feel something when you go out there? I know earlier, the other podcast, you said for some reason you're in the ghost business, but you're not as open all the time as other people may be, as feeling things. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, what I said was things don't happen to me
There you go.
much.
That was
right,
it. Yeah.
Right. But, I mean, I did feel like they were out there, but like I said, it wasn't a feeling because I made sure, I let them know not coming here to take anything, here in peace.
Do you talk
just
out
checking
loud like that?
Sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay with me. I'm do it. Are you kidding me? If I walked out there after hearing this story, I'm talking before I get there. I'm treating it like a bear.
Exactly.
I want you to hear me,
And so they knew I wasn't out there to cause them any problems or to, be disrespectful or anything. And I think, for that reason, they were cool with me being there.
Hey, folks, don't forget, this episode is also brought to you by Team Monteith with Keller Williams. Find ChattanoogaRealEstate.com. I don't understand. And we said this the last podcast. If we believe in spirits after we're gone, we all know we have spirits when we're here then. So I think sometimes that you can feel energy. I think the word I would use is energy.
Yep, I agree.
You can feel energy, and there's good energy, bad energy. Energy can change. It flows, I think, like water. And I don't know. I just think that's we're kind of silly if we think, I don't know what extent you want to take it. But when you go to a place like that where something has happened, I think that is, I think it's completely possible for energy to stick around for a while.
Right.
And you take that other side of it. I read one thing before you came in. It was called, what did they call it about this murder? There was sex parties, drugs, and murder. Oh, Satan, sex parties, drugs, and murder. That was the description of this case. And when we were talking before we came on, you one of the things that you told me is it's just people.
Yeah.
I mean, you can, and I'm not telling you that you agree with it. I'm not telling you that lifestyle is good. What I'm saying to you, though, it all boils down to some people killed other people, humans.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And like I said, the victims in this case people are so divided about them. And most people want to believe either they're angels or demons. But like I said, I don't think they're either one. I think they're human. I think I would have loved to have known them. I think they were fascinating guys. And I don't think they had any ill intent towards the world. Like I said, and it wasn't the devil. They weren't worshiping the devil or anything like everybody thinks. But Charles was an intellectual. A lot of the people who are in the Church of Satan are. They're atheists. They don't believe in God or the devil. But I think that they've done a lot of interesting things in their lives, and I think they would have been really fascinating people to have talked to. But I don't think you can sit there and say, oh no, they were angels. All this stuff about LSD and all this stuff wasn't true, because there's some evidence about that. But they're human. Don't put them up on a stand on a pedestal and try to make them something they weren't. I don't think they would like that either, any more than they would like being made out as demons. Yeah.
Jeff Stiles did a podcast. Again, we have him in common as a friend. A couple of, it's fredpodcast.com. And
Fred the Show.
Yeah, Fred the Show is the name of the radio show. He had a guy named Deacon Blues on. We talked music a little bit because I love blues and jazz. But he was talking about characters when Sonny the Flower guy, who just passed away downtown Chattanooga. I'm sure you've heard of Sandy the Flower. Sandy Bale. We were just talking about characters and how the world has so few characters and characters that are characters not by some sort of manufacturing, like you're making a boys band and they're born that way.
Yeah.
And when you and I'm not saying these guys are characters that way, but when you run across unique personalities, these unique stories, that's what hooks people in.
Right. And you know what? One of my favorite books is Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, and I love it because it talks about the different characters in Savannah. And so I tried to do some of that with this book, because Northwest Georgia has like a plethora of characters, not just the people involved with the murders, but a lot of the people in the legal community and things like that. So I talk a lot about some of their stories there too. There was a fellow there named Zach, whose card said, "I sure do like running naked." This card that he'd run out, he'd give out to everybody. He was a nudist that would like to hang out at the Corpsewood property after the deaths. So, small towns can have some of the best characters.
Here's your book with short stories in it. You know what I'm saying? So I'm looking through your chapters. This is the content. Content of the town, the victims, the manor, the Church of Satan, life and Trine, the killers, the crimes, the discovery, the sheriff, the prosecution, the judge, the trial, the appeals, the plea, property case, the haunting or curse of Corpsewood, the bodies, and rest in peace. The reason I wanted people to hear that is that the book is way more than a 20-minute conversation or 25-minute conversation. Right. You address some of the characters you experience during this whole interview process.
Yeah. Well, one of them, the DA, I used to work for him, and he's one of the most colorful people there was on the planet, Red Lominick. So,
oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. He was he's the one who liked to sit in court and spit tobacco and tell stories and well, ladies and gentlemen of the jury,
like the old school Matlock type thing, or
not really Matlock. No, he'd get his words mixed up a lot. He'd talk about the fly on the iceberg and a lot of a lot of stuff. He didn't usually try the cases because he knew what he did, although occasionally he would attempt that, but he was definitely a character.
You're getting your
and I talk about
analogies
him
and metaphors mixed up, sir.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. So it sounds like it would be a good book to read, especially if you're into true crimes, especially if you're into something, if you like these podcasts. Let's do this before we wrap this one up. You ready? Mm-hmm. Chickamauga Battlefield here in Chattanooga, Tennessee area, North Georgia, whatever.
Right.
We did our Ghost Stories podcast, and as soon as we finished, I went, The Chickamauga battlefield.
Right.
It is haunted.
Yes. Yeah, it has a few different things there. Oh, Green Eyes is the most famous.
That's what I was going to ask you. Snodgrass Hill.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yep.
Because that one was around when I was in high school.
Yep. Well, there's that one. The tower, Wilder Tower, there is also supposed to be haunted by something different. There's a whole battalion of soldiers that are out there. There's a bride that's out there. There's some sort of cat ghost that's out there. But the most famous is Green Eyes.
Green Eyes, yeah.
Which isn't, a lot of people will tell you Green Eyes isn't really a ghost. He's more like an elemental or some people will say he's a spirit that started out as not bad or good, but kind of turned bad. So,
oh, really?
Yeah.
Is there any tours out there of those, or is it?
No, I actually had the Fort Oglethorpe. They had a tourism association or something one time that asked me to do tours out there, and I did some research, but I didn't really think there was enough to give people their money's worth. There's so much you can talk about, but it's spread out some and all. So didn't ever do it. And these days, they will not let you get out of your car at night. And most of the park is closed off at nighttime. So
that's what I was thinking. If you do this, some of the places that I'd heard about when I was growing up, you have to get out of your car and walk. There's a field involved over a ridge or a hill or you can't just sit in your car. It's not like Cades Cove.
I tried to set up an arrangement when we had the hop on, hop off Gray Line trolley here to do a bus tour, something jointly with them so they could take us out there, drive through the battlefield, and we could talk about the stories while we were on the way through there, even if we couldn't go to all the parts of it. But then they went out of business, and so that never came to pass. But that's really about the only way you could really do that one is if you were telling stories while you're passing through, because you can't stop and get out at nighttime.
Well, I just wanted to address it. And going back to this book, if you're into this, you should read the book. Me doing a podcast on this, because I know I'm going to get grief from people in my I'm a Christian.
Uh-huh.
Okay. But listen to what I'm telling you.
I'm a Christian too.
There you go. But the reason I even say that is we're in the South. Mm-hmm. And I know the pushback on these topics, when you start talking about it, there's a lot of political correctness out there. I can't believe you talked about it. This is real life stuff. And I love the true crime aspect. I listen to the podcast now. I got hooked on a friend. And these things, they have character on their own. And it's a great insight to human nature.
Yep. And you know what?
Huge insight to human nature. The psyche of the brain.
How can you believe in ghosts if you don't believe in the spirit?
There you go.
There you go. You got to believe there's a life after death.
Absolutely. Well, and I think sometimes the life here on earth does cross over, and I think we talk to the life that's after.
Right.
And that's where you come in.
Exactly.
That's why you have the ghost tours. That's why you write books. Are you going to write another book?
I have a couple of them dancing around in my head
right now.
So.
Just give us a tease.
Well, one of them's a true crime, and then one of them's a little different from what I've done so far. It's a fiction, sort of a historical mystery thriller type. So.
Really? Mm-hmm. That is cool. So there's some great historian folks in Chattanooga, people that are really into history. I'll tell you who they are when we get off the air.
Okay.
And if you want to pick their brains, they are top notch.
Awesome.
And one of them's an attorney. So,
okay.
There you go. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks so much.
All right. The name of the book again is?
The Corpsewood Manor Murders in North Georgia.
There we go. And the name of the company, in case you're wanting to get into the ghost tours?
Chattanooga Ghost Tours, Inc. We do tours and ghost hunts with equipment.
There we go. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Hey, thank you for listening to this podcast. Share it, rate it, review us, do all those things, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye. Thanks for listening to During the Break. If you like this episode, share it with your friends. If you have a few minutes, please rate and review the podcast on iTunes to help us reach a larger audience. Also, like our Facebook page and check out our website, duringthebreakpodcast.com. If I haven't asked too much already,